everybody, and welcome into another edition of Before the Sandstorm. Happy game day. I am Kendall Smith alongside of Wes Mitchell back here to preview South Carolina's matchup tonight against the Auburn Tigers. The second time in 3 weeks, Wes, that South Carolina is playing the Tigers in Columbia. And tonight, definitely going to be an interesting game, an opportunity for South Carolina to become bowl eligible. And one of the storylines that's really taking over tonight's game is the fact that Mike Bobo is back in Columbia. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure most of you do know, Mike Bobo was the former interim head coach, former offensive coordinator for the South Carolina Gamecocks. He was going to stay on with Shane Beamer when Shane came to take over for Will Muschamp last year, ended up taking a job at Auburn, and now he is the OC and quarterbacks coach at Auburn. It's a whole story. But Wes, I want to start things off asking, do you think Mike Bobo's presence in Columbia tonight will play any effect on today's game? I mean, he knows probably a little bit more about South Carolina than the average coach. The players at South Carolina know a little bit more about him than the average player might. So what effect do you think his presence will have on tonight's game?
Yeah, I think it does have a little effect, Kendall. I think, like you said, he knows South Carolina's personnel. And Auburn has struggled to run the football this year. Because of that, from what the Auburn beat writers and media folks have told me, they've been sort of skewed towards throwing on first downs, throwing on second downs, probably more than you would think from a Mike Bobo offense. But knowing that South Carolina has struggled to stop the run, knowing that they struggled to stop the run last year when Bobo was the OC and, of course, ultimately the interim head coach at South Carolina, I'd imagine if I'm Mike Bobo, I'm coming to Williams-Brice Stadium. I'm trying to make a statement. I'm saying I'm going to try to pound the football and force South Carolina to show that they can stop it. So, to me, does it have an emotional effect? Maybe a little bit. Are the guys are the Auburn guys fired up to play South Carolina because of Mike Bobo? Probably not much of a factor at all. Are the South Carolina guys maybe a little bit more fired up to kind of, not even from a standpoint like the fans are, they're just ticked off, basically. If you saw Gamecock Twitter this week, they were trying to get Mike Bobo sucks trending, I think, or something on there. But I think just from a competitive standpoint, you always want to sort of beat the guy that you used to be on the same team with, I think, on the same side with. So that's a factor. But I really think Bobo is going to test them and say, look, prove you can stop the run. It's weird to me that Auburn has not run the football better than they have this year. They have Tank Bigsby. Gamecock fans are familiar with him. Great running back. They returned 8 offensive linemen that have started at some point in their career. So 8 returning starters, basically, on the offensive line. And then we all know what Mike Bobo is capable of as an offense coordinator running the football. It's weird to me that they have not run the football better than they have at Auburn.
So you talk about the run game there, and South Carolina struggling to stop the run game this year. Earlier in the week, Clayton White and several defensive players kind of talked about what they did in practice this week to prep to stop the run game a little bit better than they have been. So tell us what they were saying about some of those adjustments that they've made.
Yeah, Kendall, I think at some point in the season, there's only so many adjustments you can make, right? Like at some point you have to just go execute. You have to be more physical than the guy across from you. Now, I imagine they're going to tweak some things. Clayton White when he was asked that question, he really didn't give many specifics, many details. I know the last few weeks they have tried to be a little bit more physical in practice, do a little bit more good on good. They call it, ones versus ones as opposed to first team versus scout team. So that's been kind of a trend, I would say, the last few weeks. But ultimately, look at the Florida game, how they stopped the run early in that game and then sort of were able to feed off of that momentum. The crowd was feeding off the players were feeding off the crowd. It's kind of a snowball effect. To me, I do like their chances to stop the run a little bit more in their home building than I do on the road. If you look at how this season has played out, some of it's about matchups, right? Some of it's just about who you're playing. That A&M offense was really good. The Tennessee offense was really good. You have to factor that in. But now that we have a almost full season of data, they have played a good bit better at home. So I think that's important for them to have success early in this game defensively and then build off of the crowd. Because we saw it against Florida. The crowd, beginning of the game, is kind of just like, all right, we're here. What's going to happen? Not sure. Hope something good happens. Not expecting it. then the crowd was like, oh my God, this is going pretty well. And it got bigger, the crowd got louder and louder and louder. So they're going to need that to happen today as well.
You talk about getting off to a strong start on the defensive side of the ball. That also needs to happen on the offensive side of the ball for South Carolina. Jason Brown starting at quarterback today for the Gamecocks. And Shane Beamer talked earlier in the week about how he liked a lot of what he saw with Jason at Missouri, but he also needed to make some adjustments this week. So talk about those adjustments we might expect to see from Jason today.
Yeah, Jason Brown talked about it as well, talking with us. It's kind of one of those things where there was not a lot of game tape on him going into game one. And then Missouri clearly watched the tape and found his tendencies from the Florida game. One of those tendencies was rolling out of the pocket too quickly, going to that backside spin move. And what that does is basically create a bad angle for your offensive lineman, because now all of a sudden it creates a direct line for that defensive lineman who's rushing the quarterback. So huge point of emphasis this week, step up in the pocket. I know what some fans are saying. They're rolling their eyes saying, you can't step up if there's not a pocket to step up into. Well, at times, the pass protection was made to look worse because of those angles that were created by Jason Brown escaping too quickly. If you're going to escape sort of to the outside of the pocket, to me, the perfect example was the Josh Van touchdown where he was so wide open against Florida. Remember, Jason Brown stepped up and then rolled out to his right, as opposed to just going directly to his right. That keeps your offensive lineman in between you and the defensive line. So it's all about angles. So I think creating those better angles for Jason Brown, protecting the football a little bit better. I thought he protected the football really well against Florida. Missouri, there were some balls that were in danger. There was an interception that got taken out because of Missouri penalty. You still, even though that play didn't happen, it still did happen. That was he put the ball in danger. So I think you have to look at those things. For Jason Brown, he's still got to walk that line. We've talked about it many times, Kendall. Walk the line between playmaker and gunslinger and those great plays that he makes while also not putting the ball in danger.
So now we've got to talk about the quarterback for Auburn, TJ Finley, obviously stepping up for Bo Nix this week, who underwent surgery. Obviously, we're wishing him a speedy recovery. The best of luck, but TJ Finley now in that starting position at quarterback for Auburn. What do you know about TJ Finley, Wes?
Well, he's 6'7". That's the first thing that stands
Wait,
out.
I just want to say that is like 1.5 feet taller than me. At least.
So, see, I was really about to answer that question by saying, how tall are you, Kendall? Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to call her out like that. But
I'm 5'2". I'm very open about it. I'm okay with it. I'm 5'2". I'm not very tall. But 6'7", I mean, if I were interviewing him, it would be like a full arm extension with the microphone if he were next to me. That's how I
like
see that.
We've all seen you interview Colin. And Colin's tall for, like, normal people.
Right.
But this is a completely different level.
Right.
So 6'7", 240-something pounds, just a massive human being. That's the first thing that you're going to notice when you see him on the sideline at Willie B tonight. Now, past that, massive arm, very strong arm. I would say the strongest arm of any quarterback South Carolina is going to face this year, certainly of any that they have faced so far. People say he's not a mobile quarterback. He's not a dual threat quarterback. I look at him, I think he can move around plenty well enough for a guy that size. He's got a knack for making people miss and at least sort of not taking that big hit. Like, he's quick enough to where a lot of times it'll be more of like a glancing blow as opposed to a direct tackle, a direct form tackle from a blitzing linebacker or pass rushing defensive end. So to me, this is the guy you got to make sure to wrap him up if you're South Carolina. The first guy may not get him down, so the second guy has to rally to him. He is not the most accurate quarterback, though. So I think he's a guy, if you're watching the game tonight, there's going to be several throws where he makes like a big NFL throw, and you're just like, what can we do to stop that if you're a Carolina fan? But then there will also be some of those throws, especially if you can get him in some third and longs where he's forced to throw the football. There's going to be some throws where you're like, thank you for missing that throw, because his accuracy can be up and down, and he throws the ball so hard at times. His touch at times will disappear on some of those short passes, and it puts his receivers and running backs that are going out for passes in a tough spot. So I think he's kind of one of those guys. He's a high upside player, but also you will get some of those throws where as a defense, you're just saying, we appreciate you missing that one. He's not one of these quarterbacks that's just going to come out and fill it up and just hit every single throw.
It'll certainly be interesting to see the way that Mike Bobo utilizes TJ Finley today, especially knowing that South Carolina's defense hasn't been one to do a great job at stopping the run game, but also having a quarterback that hasn't started in a little bit of time. So we'll see how that all plays out. But Wes, I'm not going to ask you about your game day prediction today, your score prediction, because that is in the game day guide on GamecockCentral.com. So if you haven't had the chance to check it out, be sure to check that out. But South Carolina, Wes, 2 games left on this season, at least in regular season play. We'll see about bowl eligibility after these next 2 weeks. Obviously taking on Auburn tonight in Clemson. Actually, I shouldn't even be saying their name. The team who shall not be named next week. I know I did that during the roundup this week. But I want to know, Wes, which of these 2 opponents do you feel like is the better matchup for South Carolina, the more winnable game to get to bowl eligibility?
Wow, you asked me this before the show to give me a chance to think about it, and I'm still going back and forth, Kendall. You know what? I'm gonna say Clemson just because of the emotional aspect. As we sit here on Auburn game day, I really do think South Carolina has a shot to win this game. Like, I really do. These games are way more winnable than we thought they were on paper prior to the season starting. And Auburn comes in, like you said, backup quarterback. Their kicker, who has been solid his entire career, is out for this game as well. That might be a little thing to keep an eye on if it's a super close game. But, just looking, this is the best chance South Carolina has had to beat Clemson since when? You go back even, 2015 was when Sean Elliott was the coach. Carolina kept that game close, but even on paper, nobody expected them to win that game. So 2014, not a great Carolina. This is the best chance for Carolina to beat Clemson since 2013, which is the last time they did beat Clemson. So I just have a feeling a little bit of added edge in that game because Carolina is going to go into it truly feeling like Clemson is beatable. And in the rivalry, that can be everything. So both games are winnable. I'll give Clemson the slight edge as far as being most winnable for the Gamecocks.
You said 2013 was the last time that South Carolina beat Clemson.
Don't tell us. I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
How old do you think I was?
I don't know. How old were you, Kendall?
I was literally just turned 13.
Okay. All right.
So I was, just starting my teenage years when South Carolina last beat Clemson. I'm now 21, so it's been a long time. So we will see what happens. But 2 opportunities, Wes, for South Carolina to become bowl eligible. That would be an accomplishment for this Gamecock team. I think nobody would have seen coming, especially at the start of the season. But tonight, 7 o'clock on ESPN, South Carolina looks to get bowl eligible against the Auburn Tigers and Mike Bobo. That's going to do it for us this week on Before the Sandstorm. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Have a happy, safe game day, and we will see you back for the rundown later on tonight with myself and Colin Taylor.